Welcome to Classic Books Recaps, where the greatest stories ever written are brought back to life in minutes. Whether you're revisiting a favorite or discovering a new classic, you've come to the right place. Remember to hit subscribe and join us on a journey through the greatest novels ever written. Now, let's dive into today's story. Jane Eyre by Charlotte Brontë. Let me tell you the story of Jane Eyre, a plain, clever girl who starts life with nothing, but refuses to let the world break her spirit. Jane is just 10 when we meet her, living at Gateshead Hall with her cruel Aunt Reed and her spoiled cousins. Jane is an orphan, and although her uncle once promised to care for her, he's long gone, and the family treats her more like a burden than a child. One day, after defending herself against her cousin's bullying, Jane is punished by being locked in the dreaded Red Room, the room where her uncle died. It's cold, dark, and terrifying. That moment plants the seed of independence in Jane's young heart. She learns early that the world can be unfair, but she won't be silent about it. Eventually, her aunt sends her away to Lowood Institution, a charity school for orphan girls. It's supposed to be a fresh start, but things are far from easy. Life at Lowood is bleak. The girls wear thin clothes in freezing temperatures, eat awful food, and are punished harshly. The headmaster, Mr. Brocklehurst, preaches Christian humility, but lives in luxury himself. But even in that hard place, Jane finds light. She becomes close to Helen Burns, a kind, wise girl who teaches Jane the power of forgiveness and grace. Tragically, Helen dies of consumption, but her friendship leaves a lasting mark on Jane's soul. Jane stays at Lowood for 8 years, first as a student, then as a teacher. She grows into a strong and thoughtful young woman. But she longs for more. A new chapter begins when she applies for a job as a governess and receives a letter from a mysterious estate called Thornfield Hall. Thornfield is grand, quiet, and a bit eerie. Jane's job is to teach a lively French girl named Adele, the ward of the estate's owner. The housekeeper, Mrs. Fairfax, is kind but evasive about the master, Mr. Rochester, who is often away. One evening, Jane meets Rochester by chance when his horse slips on the icy road. She helps him, not knowing who he is. He's rugged, brooding, and not traditionally handsome, but he has a strange, magnetic presence. Rochester is intrigued by Jane's quiet strength, and they quickly strike up a unique connection. But Thornfield hides secrets. Jane hears strange laughter echoing through the halls at night. Rochester's bed catches fire, and Jane saves him, but the incident is blamed on a mysterious servant named Grace Poole. Jane suspects there's more to the story. Over the weeks, Jane and Rochester grow closer. He teases her, challenges her, and values her opinion. For the first time in her life, Jane feels truly seen. But her feelings are tested when Rochester invites wealthy guests to the house, among them the beautiful and arrogant Blanche Ingram, who clearly intends to marry him. Jane's heart quietly breaks. She believes she has no chance, until Rochester suddenly proposes to her. Not Blanche. Jane is stunned. She's poor, plain, and a governess. But Rochester insists he loves her, deeply, passionately, and sincerely. Jane says yes, and for a brief moment, her happiness seems complete. But on the morning of their wedding, something shocking happens. Just as the ceremony is about to begin, a man interrupts, claiming Rochester is already married. It's true. Rochester confesses. His wife, Bertha Mason, is alive, but dangerously insane. She's been locked in Thornfield's attic for years. She's the one behind the laughter, the fire, the haunting feeling in the house. Rochester begs Jane to stay with him, not as his wife, but as his companion. But Jane, torn between love and self-respect, refuses. She knows she can't lose herself, no matter how much her heart aches. That night, she leaves Thornfield, with no money, no plan, and no idea what lies ahead. Jane wanders alone across the moors, cold and starving, until she's taken in by three kind strangers: Diana, Mary, and their serious brother St. John Rivers. They nurse her back to health and help her find work as a village schoolteacher. In an incredible twist, Jane learns that they are her cousins, and that she's inherited a fortune from a previously unknown uncle. Jane now has something she's never had before: family, money, and a quiet sense of peace. St. John, the devoted missionary, asks Jane to marry him, not out of love, but duty. He wants her to join him in India as a missionary wife. Jane considers it, but then something pulls her back. One night, she hears a voice, Rochester's voice, calling her name across the wind. She knows she has to return to Thornfield. Jane rushes back to Thornfield, only to find the mansion burned to the ground. In a final act of madness, Bertha set the house on fire. Rochester tried to save her, but she jumped to her death. Rochester survived, but was badly injured. He lost his sight and a hand. Now he lives in a remote house called Ferndean, blind and broken. Jane finds him there, and the reunion is heart-wrenching. Rochester is ashamed, thinking Jane could never love him now. But Jane assures him her love hasn't changed. She chooses him again, this time freely, and with full knowledge of all his faults and wounds. They marry quietly, and this time it's real. Jane's story doesn't end with a wedding. She finds real happiness, not because of wealth or status, but because she stayed true to herself. Rochester slowly regains sight in one eye, just in time to see the face of their newborn son. Jane now has love, family, and peace, not because she chased them, but because she demanded they meet her as an equal. Jane Eyre is more than a romance. It's a story about fighting for your identity, your values, and your voice. Jane is a heroine who never compromises who she is, not for love, not for comfort, and not even for survival. In a world that tried to define her worth, Jane Eyre declared, "I am enough." And that, perhaps, is why her story still resonates nearly 2 centuries later. If you enjoyed this recap of Jane Eyre, don't forget to like and subscribe. And hit the bell for more classic books recaps. Let us know which story you'd like next in the comments.